Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL, or Reading Between the Lines. This is the balance adjustment preview for Hwayoung's nerf. Yes, I said nerf. So instead of talking about the nerf itself, I'm making this video quite late in the day because I've been busy. But in terms of I think a lot of people are already talking about this. So there's two categories of this nerf, and I think I should talk about both. One is that if you are a mid-game player and you're already trying World Arena, you're doing Guild War and regular arena, and you see a Hwayoung on a defense team, or you're versing a player who has Hwayoung, it might be very difficult to fight because realistically the current condition or current meta of the game, Hwayoung has several counters. Epic 7 has made sure that they've created a lot of counters for her. The other thing is carry, gear carry. So one way to deal with Hwayoung in a competitive scenario is to just cleave her, or in other words, outspeed and take turn one and kill her off, or kill off her whole team. So she has flaws. Okay, so these flaws were obviously developed. I mean, it's been 7 months, I believe, since Hwayoung has been released. So there are ways to deal with her. So in terms of the top-end World Arena players or the top-end PvP players will come to the same conclusion as me, and that would be, in summary, that this nerf is, one, too much, and also may not be necessary. Although, let's say it is necessary, but I would say that this nerf is too much. For players who are of maybe mid-game and you're still doing PvP, I totally understand that Hwayoung can still be scary. And let's face it, we all, even in top-end World Arena, we all lose to Hwayoung. We all have lose to Hwayoung. It's not that you can just fight Hwayoung and never lose to her, right? There's a reason why this nerf is happening. But with that being said, I think that a couple things should be opened up right now. And one is the possibility of nerfs in the future. So this is what this video is really for. Possibility of nerfs in the future after Smallgate said that they will never nerf. Yes, they go around and say that they'll never nerf, but then they nerf 3 stars, they nerf maybe a 4-star hero. But Angel of Light is still roaming around. Bellion not as oppressive, but Bellion's mechanic is really annoying. Politis, to some, at the end of the day, it's once this can of worms is open, where does it stop? Now, I myself, if you follow me on YouTube, you come to my Twitch streams, I always talk about nerfing should be on the table, and I still believe that's to be the case. It's just that don't tell us we're never going to nerf, and our solution to, balancing the game is to create counters or to create mechanics or to buff other heroes. They now see it's unsustainable, but everyone that I know had already said if you introduce nerfs, it's more sustainable, right? It's more sustainable. It's like rock, paper, scissors, but right now it's rock, paper, scissors, PlayStation 4 controller, cell phone. You're adding too many elements, so it's less about rock, paper, scissors. But if they went with the nerf and buff approach at the beginning, then we're talking more about the rock, paper, scissors. I'm using that example not to say that balancing a game is literally 3 aspects and you just have to balance 3. I'm not saying that. But for those who are like-minded like me, hopefully you understood what I'm talking about. But basically saying that instead of adding fuel to the fire and the fire gets bigger and bigger, aka power creep, they should have just allowed nerf. In a previous patch note, I did say that by saying that, you really pin yourself in a corner. Now you're going to look like a hypocrite if you ever nerf. But alright, so be it. If you guys don't want to nerf, don't nerf. Here comes the nerf. And they nerfed it too hard. So now I feel like a person that's whining, but I'm really not. Hopefully you guys can hear, I'm calling this session reading between the lines. Hopefully you can hear between my lines here. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that they're definitely overcompensating, or maybe they're not used to nerfing a 5-star hero. But now let's see, we have this on the table. They're willing to nerf heroes now. Can they set a better, how do you say this? A better system? I think one thing that they should really consider now is that, are you guys going to be nerfing heroes regularly in a balanced patch? Now, I read through this entire patch note. I think there's some conclusions to that, but I don't get the sense that they're gonna consider nerfing or like when I say nerf, I'm talking about like we're talking about real balance, right? Adding specific mechanics that make a hero advantageous, but maybe taking something out because if you add too much, then that hero is just too good or whatever, right? Like, so that's what I talk about balance. Like, are they gonna do that in the future, or are they gonna do this thing where they have proposed every time we're gonna nerf someone, we're still gonna give you the selector, we're still gonna allow you to recall, but we'll let you know 2 weeks ahead of time, right? Like, is that gonna be the case? So we're gonna get more one-off nerfs. So is Rand gonna get nerfed next, right? So like, is Rand gonna get nerfed next? Like, who else is on the table? Like, we talk about Angel of Light, with Hwayoung nerfed, currently, Archdemon Shadow, Senya. Like, are those heroes gonna get nerfed? Shu? Are those heroes gonna get nerfed, right? So like, it's just like, that opens up that conversation. But I think that it would be good for Smallgate Epic 7 to show us kind of like a roadmap of how they feel that, because the thing is, like, with this, right, it's scary for the player even more so, because before, when they said they will never nerf, all the players had to do was say that, okay, if this hero looks like crap, just pull for them anyway, hopefully you get lucky. If you're free to play, you have free to play bookmarks, and you have to say for a collab, you know, you're just like, okay, I'll pull 10 here on this, let's say Taeyu banner, on this, you know, Yuoha banner, on the Sharoon banner, I'll pull 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, because we know they're gonna get buffed, right? But now it's like, okay, they're gonna get nerfed. Now, Smallgate has still implemented this system of, if they get nerfed, they give you a recall, which is beyond generous. I know this is one of the arguments people are saying that, oh, they can't nerf, otherwise they're gonna get too many heroes recalled, and all that stuff, and then they're gonna lose money. There's another solution to that. It's really just Epic 7 putting their foot on the ground, saying that, you know, in the future we're gonna buff and nerf, but we're not gonna do recalls after X amount of date. And then you let that riot happen, right? Now I get it, there are some whales who, like, you know, invested in it, but if they had set that as the precedent, then all the people who were whaling can't complain by the time they nerf, right? Because they knew what they were doing. So in terms of, I don't think Epic 7 needs to cower in a corner saying that, okay, we didn't want to nerf because we didn't want to recall. And then now they're in a point where, oh, we have to nerf, but let's still give you the recall. They need to work out the actual game plan for buffing and nerfing in the future. They need to really rethink that. That's one thing I wanted to say right off the top of my head. Right off the bat, we got to get that out of the way, because for endgame players, for players who have just common sense and you're grounded in the balance of like a game dev cycle and a live service system, so like Epic 7, Gacha as well, like people might be spending money, but you might get free to play. So like, please, like if you're free to play, you know, it's not that your contribution in terms of your thoughts and stuff don't matter, but you definitely have to think about it from a free to play perspective and not, like, you know, cross over to how a pay to play should react, right? Like, you know what I mean? So anyways, that being said, that is one thing I wanted to talk about, and then we get to the actual buff, which, or sorry, nerf. I keep saying buff, right? I'm so used to never using the term nerf with Epic 7 that I'm calling this a buff. No, it's not a buff. I don't believe it's a buff. Couple things we need to know is that the skill description mention of this preview may be updated by the time of the actual update. I think their release is a bit early, kind of like the Ervelyn buff, where they buffed him to be a PvE hero. They saw the, you know, they saw the riots, they saw the complaints, and they're just like, okay, instead of having that recall, let's just make him a better PvP hero. And Ervelyn serves to be a decent PvP hero if you have the full team comp with him, if you have the gear for him to one-shot. Like, he does his job, and I think they need to figure out what Hwayoung really does. At the summary of this is that we're just ensuring Hwayoung remains specialized in contesting enemies with high health. In my opinion, she doesn't really do a good job. Alright, so with that, let's talk about this. So supersonic kick, first thing, is that when the caster's buff, a successful attack inflicts additional damage proportional to the caster's attack. So you still get that Uberius Tooth pop. So for those who did not know, I know that some people actually didn't know, especially when Hwayoung was really new, is that when she was buffed, she had like an additional damage, right? So it wasn't just Uberius Tooth carrying that S1 damage. It was really the S1's additional damage with Uberius Tooth that made it look so good. The S3 killed not really because of Uberius. Sometimes able to get that last 2000 HP off that A Robbie or whatever, but it's really the defense pen and the increased damage, which that also got nerfed. But in terms of the S1, why it's so powerful, like one kick into any DPS, like a Kisei, Sid, anything with like about 9000 HP, 8000, 9000 HP, usually one S1 would just pop them to death. It's just because of that, right? So this, I think the successful attack thing, I'm okay with this nerf. This makes it so that, like they said, evasion, as they talk about it here, yeah, so high evasion heroes, they don't just have no value, right? So like Rylet and Green Violet was like just really bad into Hwayoung. It was almost always a guarantee for her to kill Rylet or Violet because of that S1 pop, right? And that kind of skips the evasion check. So now that with the successful attack, that's kind of makes more sense. And also this would prevent her from like, you know, Shu is a really good counter into Hwayoung, but I have seen as many wins with Hwayoung versus Shu as Shu versus Hwayoung. So in terms of like, if Hwayoung doesn't miss on the S3, soul burns and attack buff, soul burn S3, S1 into Shu, Shu's can still die, even with the 30% damage reduction in the World Arena Frenzy at the moment. So like you know, this is good. I think this is the right buff. Having it, you know, whether or not the attack hits was pretty crazy. However, they did remove the combat readiness, and I think with the rest of the nerfs, I keep calling it buff, I just realized. With the rest of the nerf, the combat readiness, in my opinion, has to be there. So while before, the way that Hwayoung worked as a whole on the left side before, I think nerfing the combat readiness made sense. But now that the whole right side, so the post buff or post nerf is so much worse, I think the combat readiness has to stay. And if anything, just reduce the combat readiness, maybe 10% combat readiness instead of 15. So one of the things is that Hwayoung, it wasn't just that she did a lot of damage, it was that she can output that much damage fast. Combat readiness for the S1, and then the S3 has a really low cooldown cycle, and then she can soul burn to make it even quicker. So it was more about not the individual damage as crazy, it's about the overall output damage. And then she's just not like a regular DPS, again using like a Evelyn or Ice Kisei. Let's not say they have Wind Rider, let's just say that they're exposed after their S3 or whatever. Oh, let's say use Green Sid, I guess. Like if you're exposed, you're dead on the next turn. They're kind of burst damage dealers, right? So Hwayoung before is a burst damage dealer, but then she has high survival. So that is where I think they've really messed up. Now she becomes, in my opinion, not a damagey hero, but with high survival. And then what, right? Okay, so a couple things more is that the damage dealt is increased to compensate for the additional damage decreased. So not only do you need a successful attack now, your additional damage is also decreased from it. Your damage dealt, the base is increased. Now, I don't know how much they can increase for this to make it feel balanced. My speculation is that it will be just overall much less effective. Yeah, so the additional damage is decreased. Then we talk about Prairie Hawk, so the passive. Increased attack by 30%, so reduced from 50%. 20% reduction on her is super huge. If you reduce 20% from her, to get a 7k attack Hwayoung is gonna be nearly impossible. Like, nearly impossible. You have to get rid of so much. In terms of current World Arena Hwayoungs, we're looking at like a 15,000 HP, ideally like some kind of like a 1500 defense, 7k attack, 220 speed, roughly around there, maybe speed immunity, speed or something else. But either way, this help carry it, right? The other thing is that if this barrier is scaled on the caster's attack and she has 3%, the barrier is also lessened. So not only does the S1 in terms of the damage is technically lower, her passive is also going to affect that damage being lower. The barrier, so one of her key portions of her survival also gets lower, and then the Uberius Tooth value also becomes lower. So we in this patch or this balance patch note, they do talk about recalling her, and you'll get these things potentially called mana slates. They don't know yet. It's a TBD name, but you can use those dupes or those slates, whatever, into RGB heroes and can't use them in ML. But if you have put actual unknown slates into Hwayoung, again, it does say this at the end of the note here. So if you haven't read this and you need to know how to recall certain aspects of your recall, definitely read this on your own time. I won't be covering that in this video. But you can potentially get your unknown slates back, right? You just have to contact customer service, which is also kind of annoying, but I gotta do it. So basically, I put in 2 arena slates into my Hwayoung, but I'm obviously gonna recall it, and I'm also gonna get those slates back because I want to put them into ML5s or something else, you know. So yeah, like, so Uberia's Tooth is not mentioned in terms of a recall. And if any E7 dev is listening to this, in my opinion, you have to highly consider that, because that's literally what you did for like a Wind Rider, sorry, for the Sez and Green Vildred nerf in terms of how they interacted with Wind Rider. Wind Rider was given as a recall, but even though some may argue, well, no, Jagan, that was technically an artifact change, that's why they're recalled. It was a both and thing to me, and to me, Uberia's Tooth is best in slot for Hwayoung, and no other hero uses Uberia's Tooth as good as Hwayoung. What about the people who put Bottle of Knowledge into the artifact? Because since Hwayoung's release, Uberia's Tooth has never entered the powder shop. So we're talking about, again, when Hwayoung was released about 7 months ago. For 7 months, the Uberia's Tooth, at least to my knowledge, was never in the powder shop. I think there was Uberia's Tooth combined with Mystic Banner at the most. But for those who didn't know, that Uberia's Tooth used to be the artifact that came with Luna, but that was only year 1 in global. And then Luna got Draco Plate by the time she got re-released. So Uberia's Tooth ended up being a unsummonable artifact in terms of, like, you can never obtain it like with a certainty. It would always be like, you know, either a Mystic combo, or again, in powder shop has never been there, but off banner, right? So what do people do if they powder the Uberia's Tooth? I'm one that used 1 powder. Now I personally don't mind it as much because I was lucky enough in the first rotation of Luna. For those who know me, I triple S Luna on the first banner, so I did get up to a plus 27 Uberia's Tooth, and then when Hwayoung came out, I actually dusted that off, and then I did Bottle of Knowledge it once, but I only did it once, so I'm not super salty if they don't refund that. But I know that a lot of players put all their bottles into it, and it's still like a plus 27 Uberia's Tooth. It's still not plus 30. So it's like, what about those players, right? So if devs are watching this video somehow, one of my critiques would be that include that into the recall. You will make the player base much happier, because let's be real, that artifact is only usable for Hwayoung. A lot of people put investment into that, and we would like that recall too. I think that would be great. Again, like I said, I personally don't care. It's just 1 bottle. I could just say that I dusted off as, oh, I made a mistake, never again. But you know, that's the scary part about nerfing now, right? They might have to start allowing recalls for certain artifacts that may be best in slot for that character, because you would never know if, let's say, you know, I don't know, like Green Sid gets nerfed. Like, people went ham on Wind Rider, so they can give Sid a plus 30. Like, if Sid gets nerfed, like, does Wind Rider get nerfed too? So all of these things are, you know, they have to be brought to the surface. This is why I feel like Epic 7 needs to give us a game plan. Like a plan of how they will deal with nerfs in the future, how often they plan on nerfing, is it going to be more regular, all that stuff. They need to allow us to, like, this came out of nowhere, right? This is why this is news. This is why there's drama. This came out of nowhere. Everyone was like sleeping and then woke up and said, what the frick? She's getting nerfed 7 months later, after you have created multiple ways of dealing with her. Anyways, I talk a lot. Monarch's Flaming Strike. Let's talk about the Awakened version. So this is also nerfed to the ground, okay? So after dispelling all buffs from the caster, attacks the enemy with the secret technique, grants immunity for cast for 2 turns. When the target's Max health is greater than the caster's max health. Penetrates target's defense with a penetration rate increasing proportional to the difference up to a maximum of 100%. You have to be very careful about this. This was, you get penetration defense, 100% defense pen, no matter what. But when the target's max health, so Hwayoung's health, oh sorry, when the target in terms of her, what she's hitting is greater than hers, the difference can be up to 100%. That means the damage is doubled. This is talking about something completely different. This is talking about the defense penetration rate is based on the caster's health. This reminds me of ML Pavel. Why so many people have to chase like a 5.5k attack ML Pavel, even after attack buff. It's because of that attack differential. It's really hard to reach. It's really hard to reach. So to get the maximum 70%, he caps at 70% defense pen. So let's be real, this is 100%. But still, that being the case, like Hwayoung will most likely not be able to kill like something like Archdemon Shadow. It just depends on how much HP they have, right? Like, so like the emphasis of a lot of heroes like maximizing HP over defense was to survive Hwayoung. Although in Hwayoung's old case, it wouldn't have mattered. She would just one shot. But now it's like you can kind of be like, okay, so Hwayoung either has to have like 10,000 HP, which used to be the old Hwayoung build anyway, like just fast, high damage, low HP, high defense. But Hwayoung's build had to transform because of like players running Operator Cigarette against Hwayoung, and Operator Cigarettes were able to one-shot her even without attack buff. So players had to change the build of Hwayoung to adapt to the situation, to adapt to the meta. So I mean, it's not like Hwayoung was like invincible. She had struggles. People had to adapt her build, and then make her like around like 15,000 HP, so that it almost guarantees most op cigarettes can't one-shot her with the S2 without attack buff. All right, so this S3 now just becomes, it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. One, you might not even guarantee the defense pen to 100. But if you do get the 100, you're missing on double the damage. She's not a crit damage hero, so you can't scale it based on stats, right? So we all know that damage mods are one thing, but then you can accelerate that damage mod based on crit damage, right? So you can have 250 crit damage versus the 300 crit damage, and you have a 50% more crit damage there. That's huge. But even though this is damage dealt is increased in terms of the mods, she doesn't do crit damage. So like, I don't know how much more damage they can increase to compensate for the loss of damage here, because unless I'm overreacting, this is going to be underwhelming. So this entire thing is going to be underwhelming. And then we have the required max difference amount increase as well, which means that Hwayoung's HP must be further suppressed to guarantee a 100% defense pen, and then you will never have the double damage. So in terms of her one-shot capability, I don't know, man. I think this is up in the air until the mods come out, until testing is done. But I'm gonna say right now that the way it's looking right now, I'm going to recall her now and then maybe rebuild her later, because I don't think that the imprint on her, so my slates that are used into her, is just not going to be as valuable as it was. Yubiri's Tooth is going to lose value, especially if she just gets kicked to the curb. Maybe she runs a different artifact for like a totally different playstyle, right? So maybe Yubiri's Tooth won't be the best thing anymore. And then the turn cooldown +1 is good. Turn cooldown +1 has been one of the biggest deals for Hwayoung. I don't think people minded that she had a barrier. I don't think people minded that she has damage mitigation. But I think people minded, again, like I said, with the amount of damage she can output, but at the pace of she can output that much damage. That is something that no other DPS can do. She is solely the only DPS that can output that kind of damage that rapidly and almost have no cooldown. So this cooldown increasing +1 is a huge thing in terms of it's a really well balanced nerf. If we're gonna take what they have here, what they set out, this is my proposal for the most balanced Hwayoung in the current meta. Now, I say in the current meta is because their meta keeps shifting, and as Smallgate said in the intro, they had tried to I forgot where it said it, but basically they said they have tried to use a lot of different ways to make Hwayoung less OP. So barrier scaling down with the frenzy, all the ice heroes, blah 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 blah. They indeed have. Her being good made other heroes more valuable. So for example, Shu, Arya before the Alencia buff was really good against Hwayoung, right? Like it made Arya more valuable. Shu, when she got buffed, Hwayoung killed her immediately, and like I said, I think out of all the ice heroes, she might have taken the most lives from Hwayoung, which means that she has been a successful hero. But on top of that, she's not just good into Hwayoung, right? She's good into all the other stuff as well. And then you have heroes that was gonna diminish in value because of this nerf. You have heroes like Yuha, which, let's face it, unless you're a Yuha lover for World Arena, you use Yuha to bait defensive teams in Guild War and in Arena if they run Hwayoung. Your Yuha most likely never dies, and you'll always kill Hwayoung. But with Hwayoung being so low in value, does Yuha value also diminish? I would say yes. If you had pulled for Yuha because she deal with Hwayoung and you needed that to win Guild Wars, you literally just potentially invested or pulled. Maybe you pitied her. I don't know. You just wasted a lot of stuff. So this is the other thing. I think that if you're gonna nerf Hwayoung, you have to still make the heroes around her sort of relevant. And yes, of course, you could tune it down. So here's my proposal, all right? So if you're watching this video, let me know if you guys agree with this proposal. I think turn cooldown can remain. I think it should be this kit still. Maybe soul burn on something else and not a second turn. Because the thing with even with Hwayoung, even with a 1-turn cooldown, if she gets souls or someone who is able to give her a soul burn right away, it's still very oppressive. So maybe change the soul burn. Okay, I don't know how though, but maybe just change the soul burn on S1, deal additional damage or something like that. But do this, increase the cooldown. That's great. I think this can stay. To be honest, I think this can stay. If they're gonna nerf anything, maybe just increase the health differential. So it forces Hwayoung to have to be lower health, right? Like that's another way to deal with it. So she's less bruisery, because the issue is, again, she's hard to kill, but then she kills fast, right? So she can't have both, right? So we could do that. And then I think this, in my opinion, could stay. 50% could stay, but the S1, I think the successful attack condition is good to stay, and I think she should still have a combat readiness. I think the combat readiness is based on the rotation of the S3 into the S1 and how strong the S1 is. So I think the first step is not to take this and say, oh, let's ship it, because I think this kills Hwayoung as a hero. If you decrease the combat readiness and you do what I said, I think she'll be a lot better tuned. She will be a lot better tuned, harder to set up for that first pick scenario. A Ravi, again, so if Hwayoung leaves, so if Hwayoung gets nerfed and dies, A Ravi Rain is going to be a lot stronger. I know a lot of heroes can deal with A Ravi, like Alencia is really good into her and all that stuff. But I'm just saying that if we're talking about a 1-for-1 battle, Hwayoung was pretty good into A Ravi, alright? So like it would still be like a 50-50, a toss-up. Based on the builds. It's like a gear diff at that point. The other thing would be Senya and Arshima Shadow. If you play a standard game, like you're not a cleaver, you're not an aggro player, and your opponent pre-bans Hwayoung, they can pick ADS, they can pick Senya, and they can still win the game very easily. And those heroes are RNG heroes to some degree, but they're pretty oppressive. I would say that, like, and all these other heroes that I mentioned. So it's not just Hwayoung alone, right? So I'm more surprised of seeing that, oh, Hwayoung's getting a nerf after 7 months of them correcting the meta in order that Hwayoung is not as strong, and then they over nerf her so that now we're kind of just like, okay, whatever. I know that a lot of players are just like, you know, yay, Hwayoung's nerf finally. But like I said, I think the context for that kind of thinking is that you either your gear probably, or gear or roster, both things can be combined, cannot deal with Hwayoung pickers. But in that sense, I think, you know, World Arena having the double pre-ban thing is still very strong. I still see Hwayoung being pre-banned and players play fine without it. So I think that this is a good step in terms of they're willing to nerf, but in terms of the step here, the step is too big. I think that they could play it slower and then reassess a lighter version of a nerf and then nerf it harder later. I don't think they need to jump the gun on this, but either way, I personally think that Epic 7 needs to really think about this process if they haven't already. Think about how they're gonna nerf characters in the future. Give us that game plan so that we can also plan on pulling heroes. Our mentality will shift now, right? They've done some weird things in the past couple of months, giving a limited hero Edward a buff a week in it, like a week into his banner. Giving Ervelyn that last minute totally flip from PvE to PvP. And then so this Hwayoung nerf, it's like kind of everywhere now. Like no players can expect anything anymore. And maybe that's the new expectation, is that we can't expect anything. But I would like it if they could give us that insight. Anyways, that's my full thoughts on this. The Hwayoung nerf, of course, but really the topic around the nerfs itself. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I know this is a heated topic right now. I know there's both sides to this, so if you are against what I'm thinking, no worries, no hard feelings. I totally understand it. If you are for my thinking, it's still whatever. I'm just someone making a video and rambling. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna end this for the video recording. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys on the next Reading Between the Lines.